Hello guys, today I will be talking about three companies, three beverage companies. The first company is Monster, the second is Pepsi, and finally there's Coca-Cola. I'll discuss their respective share price, earnings, and then I'll talk about their financial statement. The first company I'd like to talk about is Monster. From Yahoo Finance, we can see that the company missed its third and fourth quarterly earnings from last year. It missed its first and second quarterly earning for this year. As you can see, the third quarterly earning estimate for this year is lower than the third quarterly earning estimate from last year. In terms of the share price, the company at the beginning of the pandemic was at 66 and it reached a peak of 99. Pepsi, according to Yahoo Finance, bet its fourth quarterly earning from last year. It bet its first, second, and third quarterly earning for this year. And as you can see, the estimate for its fourth quarterly earning for this year is higher than the estimate for its fourth quarterly earning from last year. In terms of the share price, the company started off at 142 and it reached a peak of 173. Coca-Cola bet its third and fourth quarterly earning from last year. It bet its first and second quarterly earning from this year, and the estimate for its third quarterly earning is higher than the estimate for its third quarterly earning from last year. In terms of the share price, the company started off at 58 and it reached a peak of 64. Moving on, let us now discuss their respective financial statements. From Monster's financial statement, we can see that the company managed to increase its revenue during this time period from 4.2 billion in 2020 to 5.541 billion in 2022. Unfortunately, income did not rise significantly during this time period. It rose from 1.107 billion in 2020 to 1.377 billion in 2022. Clearly, the company's expenses are too high. I would like to see a more proportional increase in income when revenue increases. The next thing I'd like to point out is the drastic rise in governmental bonds and marketable securities. They rose from 533 million in 2020 to 1.749 billion in 2022. This is a drastic rise, and I would like to see where exactly these funds went to. how much went to governmental bonds and how much went to marketable securities. And if the funds went to marketable securities, where exactly are the securities located? It is slightly concerning. This rise is slightly concerning. It indicates to me that the management may not know how to proceed further with the company, since they are not investing in their own investments and instead investing in other companies. In the future, I would like to see a decrease in governmental bonds and marketable securities and an increase in the company's own investments. The next thing I'd like to point out is the accounts receivable and accounts payable. Accounts receivable rose from 540 million to 896 million in 2022. On the other hand, accounts payable rose from 274 million to 404 million in 2022. I would like to see an increase in accounts payable and a decrease in accounts receivable in order to improve the company's stability. In any case, that is all I have to say about Monster's Beverage. Let us now go to Pepsi and Coca-Cola. Okay, so let us begin with Pepsi. Pepsi's revenue rose from 67 billion to 79 billion in 2022. However, during this time period, the retained income stayed relatively at the same level. In 2020, it was at 7,353 million, and in 2022, it was at 7,679 million. The increase in revenue and in income is disproportional, and it indicates to me that Pepsi's expenses are too high. The company needs to reduce their expenses in order to increase their retained income. That is all of the negative things I have to say about Pepsi. Apart from that, their financial statement looks very good. It seems like the company is performing large investments. I would like to see the results of these investments in the future. And finally, the company has a good accounts receivable and accounts payable ratio. 2022, accounts receivable is at 8 billion, and in 2022, accounts payable is at 21 billion. This is a very good ratio, and hopefully they keep it up in the future. What's really surprising to me is that Pepsi's competitor, Coca-Cola, has a much lower revenue than Pepsi. In 2022, Coca-Cola had a revenue of 38 billion, and on the other hand, Pepsi had 79 billion. The fact that Pepsi's revenue is double that of Coca-Cola is astonishing to me. That being said, unlike Pepsi, Coca-Cola retains a much higher portion of revenue. In 2022, income was at 9 billion, and for Coca-Cola and for Pepsi it was only 7 billion. If we were to calculate the proportion here. So Coca-Cola retained 25% of its revenue in 2022. And on the other hand, Pepsi only retained 9.6% of their revenue. Pepsi needs to increase the amount of revenue they retain. And on the other hand, Coca-Cola needs to increase their revenue. It should be noted that it's possible that Pepsi is creating false expenses in order to reduce their income and reduce their respective taxes. Now, to what degree Pepsi is doing this is unknown to me. We'll have to see. We will have to observe them in the future. In any case, another concerning thing about Coca-Cola is their large governmental bonds and marketable securities. I'd like to know how much is in governmental bonds, where the marketable securities are. And I'd like to see Coca-Cola invest in themselves and not in other companies. On a positive note, just like Pepsi, Coca-Cola has a good accounts receivable and accounts payable. In 2022, accounts receivable was at 3 billion and accounts payable was at 14 billion. That is all I have to say about both of the companies. Let us now rate them. Now, I'm going to place Monster in the OK section. Monster is in the OK section, but it is approaching the buy section. The company has a very good financial statement. They have a lot of good revenue and a good amount of retained revenue. Their assets and liabilities are good. The only concern I have is that the company may have difficulties at growing, at increasing their profitability. This claim is supported by their drastic increase in marketable securities and governmental bonds. The company is not investing in itself. I would like to see a reduction in marketable securities, an increase in investments, in their own investments, so that they increase their profitability in the future. What's important is I'd like to see how they compete against Coca-Cola and Pepsi in the future. Two companies which are much larger than Monster. Coca-Cola is going to be placed in the OK section. The same goes with Pepsi. Although Coca-Cola retains a much higher portion of revenue than Pepsi, it does have much lower revenue than Pepsi. I'd like to see an increase in revenue for Coca-Cola, a reduction in marketable securities and governmental bonds. Just like Monster, I want Coca-Cola to invest in itself and not in other companies. Pepsi, on the other hand, has the opposite problem. Pepsi needs to increase its income. They need to reduce their expenses. If they do this, then I'll place them in the buy section. But for now, I'm going to place all three of the companies in the OK section. In any case, that's all I have to say about the three companies. In the future, I'll be talking about Interpublic Group and Omnicron Media Group. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like and subscribe, and see you in the future.